Hello and welcome to another FYC special presentation. On this episode, we're going to be doing an audio commentary. This time I've got Dustin with me. I'm not doing it solo.
Hello.
And the movie we're going to be covering is the 1990? 1990 best worst movie ever.
Our generation's Rocky Horror Picture Show, as they say.
Troll 2.
For those of you who haven't seen it, it got notoriety about 6 years ago, give or take, for being the worst movie of all time. It was 1 on IMDb's 100 Worst Movies, 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and people just started loving it all of a sudden, out of the blue.
So if you haven't seen the film, you might want to watch it before doing the commentary. I don't know if our commentary is going to be more entertaining than the film. But
we'll help with some behind the scenes stuff, so you don't have to watch the film and the documentary and read the trivia. So this could get it all done in one take. Save you some time. Or it'll hit you with too much stupid all at once.
Alright, so whatever format you're reviewing the film in, we're going to do a short little countdown here so everybody can queue up, and we'll sync the audio with the video, and we'll start with the commentary.
And hopefully you won't flub it up too much. One take, Mike. One take.
So get your optical media or digital file, get through your menus, cue it up to the beginning of the film and hit pause. And you'll probably want to hit pause on the podcast as well, and then unpause it when you're done setting up your menu. We will be waiting for you here when you get back. Alright, so assuming you're back, we will get into the countdown.
And on a count of 3, 2, 1, play.
I'll have to admit, I was genuinely surprised to see the MGM logo when this came up, because on so many of these like indie movies, it's always like 6 production companies that you've never heard of before and foreign financial backers.
A lot of people give this a lot of crap for a whole lot of things, but it was a budget of $100,000 that they did it on, so I'm a little bit more forgiving for the special effects.
I have to say, because I had heard that this was like the worst movie of all time when I first started watching it, and this opening scene, I mean, it's definitely a low-budget movie. It's definitely not the best acted movie, but it does have like a weird production value to it, like the Peter in the Forest stuff. I mean,
Peter in the Forest stuff, it's fairly typical, but like the grandpa here, he's not bad. The kid's fairly standard for this type of movie.
It's pretty bizarre, but it's bizarre. Actually, the way that I would describe this entire movie, I mean, so much of it is just strange, and the story and the execution of it is so strange, but it's still eminently watchable.
That's not to say it's good, just that it's not like Asylum level bad. The Asylum manages to fail on every single point of every movie that they do in a way that I don't find entertaining. A lot of people do, but I find that it misses the mark in so bad it's good. This one, it's earnest. It's unintentional comedy. It's unintentionally bad. Like Claudio Fragasso, he believes in this movie.
I just want to jump in and say, I love this chase music and the chase scene. It actually I got pumped up when it started, and I was like, oh, this is going somewhere good. Continue.
Fragasso honestly believes in this movie, and it's crazy, like to the extent where he's like an art house director, where he's forcing everyone to do everything in a very specific manner to get exactly the vision he has. And it's so earnest.
I also didn't hate the kid. I mean, he's a little overdone, but
it's not super out of place compared to other movies.
And when you consider like the lines that he's being given to deliver,
lines written by somebody who didn't speak English, and they would not allow them to ad-lib either. And they had to have a translator who's like the wardrobe person give directions some of the times. Like that's what they were working with.
At first I couldn't figure out if this girl was a little person. And I didn't know if she was like working with the goblins or if she was like a goblin. I love the fact that this kid pops up in that scene. I was actually thinking, because so many of these worst movies ever, they've got really bad everything. Absolutely everything. And you could tell that the director's got trouble, where he's putting the camera, and the cinematographer has no idea how to light a scene. But there's some interesting framing, and there's actually some interesting angles and perspectives and stuff that Fragasso does. That this is a movie made by people who knew how to make a movie. It doesn't have those same pitfalls. It just, and some of the effects and stuff, like this chlorophyll stuff happening, I mean, it's effectively done. The color of sap.
Maybe they have different trees in Italy, you don't know. Honestly, as somebody acting a grandpa telling a scary story to a kid, he's spot on.
That has all the subtlety of like a cereal commercial. And I have to say, Margot Prey freaked me out pretty much from the first second she was on screen. She's definitely a scary mom. Oh, and here's one of my favorite lines in the whole film. There's so many of those moments in the movie where I think it's because it was not written by people whose language was English, their first language. So some of the word choices and some of the ways that they describe things are so almost too spot on.
And for me, his daughter, I mean, no one would say that in any language. I don't think, anyway. It just, maybe it is a cultural thing where technically that could be it could be his stepdaughter or daughter-in-law, rather.
Well, I could see, you're saying it hurts me too because I'm his daughter, obviously.
But it's very awkward.
But I think the way it's written and the way it's delivered, that's what makes it so awkward. But it also feels very much like exposition. It's like, I'm going to tell you, the audience, that I am his daughter so that you know who my character is.
That's how grandparents work. Now I'm caught up. That's perfect. Also, Margot, the actress for the mom, is, at least in the documentary, the only other person who took this really seriously.
Well, I think everybody was trying to make a good movie.
They were trying, but she believed wholeheartedly that everything was like great.
It took a while for me to realize what he meant when he said 26, including the presents. I thought there was like some sort of evil force or some sort of presence that existed there. It was just a word that was thrown out. And then it wasn't until they met the other family, and the other family, their name is Presents. Presents.
Because even when it's not a Christmas movie, there's got to be some links to Christmas. At least when we review it. The actor who played the kid got this movie for Christmas, and that was the first time he saw it. And there's our Christmas link for your consideration.
I was also never sure if Elliot was specifically trying to bother Joshua or if he just got the wrong window.
I've seen a lot of bad movies where the lighting is far worse than this. You have your night for day shots. Here the lighting's actually pretty good.
You mean day for night?
Day for night.
Yeah, I think he got the wrong window. This whole dynamic with the friends is so bizarre. And you can't even like write it off as like a weird cultural thing, because
actually you can. I've heard of a culture where sneaking into women's rooms is actually a thing that happens.
No, I meant the way, because there's this
like
whole theme
with their friends and all this weird
through the whole film where she's like, you have to choose between me and your friends, and he keeps bringing his friends.
She's lucky she didn't drop that right on her face.
That's not exposition. I like the cute line with the drapes. This guy is actually like a New York Times bestselling author. I think his name is Joe Wright or something like that. I'm going to internet that. Jason Wright.
It is very after school, especially kind of acting from her. From him too.
It's so bizarre. She's telling him how much her family hates him, and then he kind of invites himself on the trip, and then she's like, I'm just going to inform them that you're coming, and we'll see you tomorrow morning when we leave, but don't bring your friends. Is it worth pointing out that a ton of the books that this guy has written are like Christmas related? Now, to be fair, I've never seen Troll, so I have no idea. I mean, I know that the two movies are completely unrelated.
100%. I did see it, however. If you want to see Julia Louis-Dreyfus before Seinfeld in a mediocre horror movie, there you go. We're going to be a happy family.
I laughed so hard when he started singing. Not because of the singing, but because of the choice of song. And how the mom was so adamant that this is like her favorite song.
It's actually very Burning Bed, where the husband was shouting at her and she's like, no, let's all sing a happy song and all pretend that nothing's bad. Some actually nice shots.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. Like,
one other thing I like watching these bad movies for is looking for those gems. There's a lot of stuff done wrong, but there's a lot of stuff done right. And that's the earnestness that I like about a lot of these movies.
Like, honestly, if you hold this movie up against something like Grizzly 2, this movie is so much better. Like I said, it has some production value. They actually did a really good job of using the budget that they had. And very rarely do I feel like they're stretching or overstepping kind of their ability to execute what they're trying to do.
Like, even that shot there with the dad, that was nicely framed, good and creepy. You could tell that that looks like it's coming out of a finger.
I mean, the dialogue is ridiculous. And it's almost incomprehensible kind of what's going on. But as far as the makeup effects on the kid, like, it's pretty successful. It's pretty good pain acting.
It's always awkward when people point out their familial relations. That is a look of disappointment.
Eating is such a huge theme in this movie. And actually, in the documentary Best Worst Ever, they're talking to Claudio Fragasso, and he's saying that this movie is dealing with really important themes.
Family and nutrition and stuff.
It was eating, family, and something else. There was a third one. It was like
friendship?
I think it might have been friendship.
What are all of you doing here? You have to make them go back.
And I just love I love the fact that he included eating as like a universal theme that we as humans and artists and creative beings dwell on. Although, to be fair, if you watch a lot of anime, there's a lot of rumbling stomachs in Japanese cartoons. Maybe it's an Italian thing.
Sorry, hitchhiker, screw you.
Yeah, I love the casual indifference. They don't even acknowledge. They're just like, get in the car, kid. Then they close the door and drive away.
You said don't bring my friends. They brought me, eh?
This movie gets a lot of shit for being, well, it's playfully made fun of for being called Troll 2, and of course it has no trolls. Oh, before I continue that, I love the fact that they state that Nilbog is a town of like 26 people, including the Presence family. And the sign, the street sign underneath the Nilbog sign is 125th Street. I don't know of any town with like a couple hundred people in it that has 125 streets. There's like a main street, there's a few avenues. It's also an interesting place to put the Nilbog sign. Anyways, Troll 2, it gets made fun of a lot for being called Troll 2, but of course there's no trolls, it's all goblins. And really, originally the script was called Goblins. And I think that's part of the confusion in the documentary when somebody confronts the director and says, why is it called Troll 2 when there isn't a single troll in the film? And he didn't get it. He probably didn't realize that trolls and goblins are two different things.
Well, the one person said that we called them goblins in the movie, but the other things that I read, or from what I see from his reaction, he says, you understand nothing. I think that he was knowingly trying to just sort of latch on to the moderate troll success, just get some sort of extra viewership, I suppose. But that to him, that's not the point. I think Fragaso's got a vision, and he doesn't see the ancillary stuff as taking away from it in any way, shape, or form. He's got these weird blinders on that really make him sort of a unique director. I agree with his philosophy that a movie that makes you feel anything is a good movie. But the weirdness that he just does not see in certain movies is so strange to me. He was so upset that people didn't like this movie.
You can actually see his heartbreak in the documentary. There's just... He simultaneously... Oh, here's another great... listing off everything in the house. This is such a weird sort of setup to begin with the whole farm family and switching houses. And
I honestly remember hearing of that kind of thing back in the day. And it's not even a bad idea. That, on the other hand, is just unnecessary and stupid.
I love how Josh just throws the ball away and he's just got that surly look on his face. But just back to Fragasso on the documentary, he's obviously loving the attention that the movie's getting, because it's finally, he's getting recognition. And what do all artists want? They want to communicate, they want to touch people, they want to have people respond to their work. But the way they're responding is, this is the best worst movie ever, and they're laughing at things that aren't supposed to be funny, and they're pointing things out, and
you can see him trying to justify it to himself, saying that it's almost as good as being the best movie because it means you touched people. But then in other scenes, like, he's really hurt, and he's just trying to add on those layer of defenses, pretty much.
And there was a couple shots in that documentary where they were like just sort of holding on his face, and you could see the sort of pain and conflict in his eyes.
I wish I had a ghost grandpa with magic powers.
I love the fact that he can stop time. He only does it this one time. And also, he's very specific in the two moments where he gives like conditions on his helping. There's here where he snaps his fingers and he says, "You have 30 seconds." And then there's later in the movie.
By the way, don't do a countdown because you're counting way too fast.
And then there's later in the movie where he says, "I'm only here for 10 minutes and then I'm gone forever." And the time is very sort of flexible in that sequence as well. But I just love the fact that he's very specific. It's 30 seconds and 10 minutes. And they're doing a really good job of not moving.
I don't even see them blinking. I'm looking for that now, actually.
And it might just be because it's a handheld camera going around the table that you're not seeing really subtle shakes or moves, but it's really successfully done.
I can see the dad sort of breathing on the drink, and it's barely moving.
And as ridiculous as the scene is, like, the kid's performance is pretty good too. That's fantastic.
Kind of gross that he peed on everyone's faces and the food 2 inches from it, but... Also, how'd they not notice that, like, 1 second before they're about to eat food, next second everything's covered in pee and this is not questioned?
I love that the previous family like indicated where everyone is supposed to sleep, and it's never really touched on. I thought he was going to piss on the kid. But I actually like this line better, talking about how he's going to avoid hunger pains by tightening his belt.
Turn into some weird sort of challenge. Which is, for the narrative, helpful, because otherwise they'd all be trees right away. Thing is, though, if the other family set out this food and was expecting them to eat it right away, why didn't they just come back in like 10 minutes and be surprised? Wait a second, why are these guys not food yet? Nobody comes by to check on them.
And what movie is that?
I don't know, we'll have to figure out and do it next.
I'm sick of this. Where are all the single, unattached, horny girls, Elliot? See the teams on that girl we just got. I'm going outside.
Also, are you hoping to find single unattached girls just walking up to random trailers in the middle of the woods?
In the middle of the woods, yeah. I also love how there's like a blue shirt, green shirt, yellow shirt, red shirt. It's almost like the Teletubbies or something. And he is clearly not a smoker.
He was kind enough to snuff it out, though, before he ran off after this girl.
The tackling actually surprised me. If you're chasing somebody who looks like they've been assaulted, tackling them may not be the way to curry their favor.
Also hitting on them when they're terrified.
I was noticing that in the very first scene where the trolls in the story segment with Peter, there's only one troll who has green on his face. And as the movie goes on, you see goblins, not troll. There's only one goblin with green around his mouth. And as the movie goes on, more and more of the masks seem to have green on them. And I couldn't help but think, the movie's probably filmed out of sequence, and when you watch the way that the trolls eat, or the goblins, I can't stop saying troll. When you see the way that the goblins eat, they're basically just like shoveling that green slime into their faces. And I'm betting they were probably staining the masks, or it was getting on the masks and they just weren't bothering to clean them off, and then the next time you saw them. That's my guess anyways. It's not bad framing, having those three guys in those positions, actually.
Also, douchebags. He's just going to walk outside for 5 seconds and screams are a good thing? What kind of porno universe do they live in where people just hook up within probably 15, 20 seconds? Who's lighting that? They're on the front door. I need some torches. They're pretty badass.
Now, coming up is what I think is possibly the worst performance or actor in the whole movie.
And the thing is, I have a hard time saying that because I don't know if that's them acting bad or them being directed to act badly. Because I remember hearing a lot of stories where they had to redo takes dozens and dozens of times until they thought, like, this is the worst take, and all of a sudden that's the one that they used.
There's just something a little too broad and arch, and the way she keeps, like, widening her eyes.
I am the most suspicious person you will ever meet in your entire life.
I might be a little sensitive to it because years ago I made a short film where one of the characters was a vampire, but they weren't actually supposed to sort of reveal that they were a vampire, or they weren't supposed to act like a vampire or any kind of traditional vampire way, and the guy who played it was so, like, over the top and Bela Lugosi and arch and I just could not get him to bring it down. And while I'll be the first to say that that movie has the movie I made has a lot of problems, none of which were his fault, he was still one of the big reasons why that movie, I think, sort of didn't succeed in
the way you wanted
in
it
the way
to.
I wanted it to. Yeah. She just happens to have, like, a piece of Stonehenge in her house.
Are there actually drinks out there that have, like, dry ice and that whole smoky thing coming out of it? I honestly want to know this because people are drinking it in these movies.
You probably could go to a bar somewhere and they probably do have drinks like that.
Is it not toxic? Like, I don't know this stuff. I've never seen it before in my life, except for in movies.
See, again, like, the editing and little bits, like, it's such a low-tech solution to have her spitting out that green phlegm or whatever it is. But, I mean, she sells it. And the way they cut it and how they shoot it, it does kind of seem like something's exploding inside her. I think that's probably part of the reason why this movie is sort of loved as much as it is, because despite sort of the hyperbolic nature of a lot of it and how much of it is sort of overdone, and there must be a logical reason. Such a great line.
He's like a deer in the headlights where he just doesn't understand what's going on and he just can't react properly, which is something I've actually seen before, so I'm even forgiving of it.
And this I think this scene goes on just a little bit long, but again, it's such a simple thing that they're doing, but it effectively tells the story of what's happening, and you don't really...
Like him right there in the background, just looking like he's feeling sick, he's woozy. I feel like he's really actually out of it. That's decent acting.
The way she sinks into the floor, I mean... When you're watching a low-budget movie, your expectations are sort of tempered. And you see something like that...
At least they should be.
You see something like that, and you're just kind of proud of how successfully they pulled it off. Here we go.
And then they're going to eat me.
Oh my god! Apparently he was doing that for way too long, and he was just tired and done with it.
There's a number of lines like that in the movie. It's the lines that everybody responds to. It's the lines that everybody loves. But I went and I watched the documentary, and because it's the lines that everybody loves, seeing... Is it George or Greg Hardy?
George Hardy, I think.
Seeing the guy who plays the dad doing the...
You don't piss on hospitality.
Yeah, and not only seeing him do that a ton of times in the documentary, but seeing just how many times he was doing it even when people weren't asking him to, because he had gotten such a big response at conventions and at screenings, and he's trying to sell, you know, the movie and how kitschy and fun and whatever it is, and he's doing it to people in his office or on the street or whatever it happens to be.
And none of them get it.
And it was too much. It was too much, and it actually kind of ruined some of those lines for me now.
Grandpa Seth got the wrong number.
The "oh my god" line, the pissing on hospitality line. And what's the deal with his shirt? With the popped collar.
He was about to get busy with his wife, so the shirt's up a little bit. It's a little ruffled. And that's why he's so frustrated and angry right now. Are you on the marijuana?
The actress said that she was a preteen at this time. Yeah, it's George Hardy. And here's another example of a cheap but successful effect. I mean, that's just a dude being lit on the other side of a piece of glass. I don't think that's an optical effect. I could be wrong. I think that's all in camera. There is a culture, though, that's really built up around... It's kind of... I liken it to the way people reacted to the prequels. The Star Wars prequels. Where people lined up for days for the other Star Wars movies because it was a phenomenon that was happening at that time. It was something nobody expected. And you had to line up. I mean, it's like the Hamilton tickets right now being like $800 because their scalpers are charging $800. Like, everybody, it's in the zeitgeist. Like, people are just freaking out about going to see this thing.
Sorry to interrupt. It's nice to see two bros that are close enough together that they can share a bed.
Yeah.
Without a whole bunch of homophobic ribbing, you know? But sorry, you were saying...
Oh, yeah, and like... When the first Star Wars prequels came out, when Episode 1 came out, people were lining up for days. They didn't have to. They wanted to be part of a cultural movement that they were too young for the first time around. And I think a lot of that hype and a lot of that sort of wannabe attitude or wanting to be connected to something, it is part of why people didn't like. I mean, those movies aren't great movies to begin with. I appreciate them, but they're certainly not masterpieces. But I think they were brought down by that expectation and by that sort of wanting it to be a cultural phenomenon. And watching the documentary for this movie, like, I think people just want to be part of the next really bad movie, like The Room or Rocky Horror. And some of those early, midnight movies, they became what they were because they were there. The moment happened for them in that moment, whereas I think there's a culture now where we're seeking out films like this.
And those were the people who all got together and made it huge for the first couple conventions that George Hardy went to. Later ones, like, nobody heard of it, nobody gave a shit, and he was like, wow, like, I stopped caring right now. But you can see it in the documentary where they were starting to laugh before lines even happened. They were laughing all the time, like you were watching some sort of Disney teen drama where they have the laugh track on non-stop, and it becomes obnoxious and way too much. And yeah, I can understand that you can like this movie, but it just seems like they like it too much, like a lot of it becomes forced because it's almost what's expected of them.
It's what the cool kids are doing. That's not to say that this movie isn't fun and that it doesn't deserve to be watched and enjoyed, because I mean, like I said, as weird as it is, I mean, this movie is weird as fuck. But it's still really watchable, even with the weird acting and the strange choices and the goofy music. It's
the combination of gems and the stupidity that make it work.
And the earnestness,
For a town of 26 people, there's a lot more buildings than you'd expect.
There is, and there's a later scene actually where they have a different angle on the street, and there you can see a car in the background there, but you can also see a car sort of just down from 125th Street.
You can see stuff over little neighborhood over top of the ridge.
I do love the Nilbog sheriff sticker. They didn't just go for a generic sheriff stencil on the side of the car. They actually got their prop people their art department to print up
26 people in town, middle of the day. Got 10 of them standing outside the store.
Actually, you just pointed out another thing. Oh god, just the warm milk. The warm milk is so gross, and he doesn't question it when he gives him the milk. He's just kind of like, okay, free milk. It's it's warm, buddy. Anyways, you mentioned the thing about standing around in the daytime. You don't really think about it, but this movie is shot almost exclusively in the daytime. There isn't a lot of night shots. I think there's only the bit at the end by the house. And I mean, for a low-budget film, that makes sense. I remember with Man with the Screaming Brain that Bruce Campbell shot. They went to Bulgaria, and it was supposed to be like a sort of Universal Monsters kind of classic horror, nighttime, running around the streets of an old European town. But the production costs and just logistical issues that they ran into, they had to shoot, I think, 95% of it during the daytime, if not all of it. I'd have to watch it again to be sure, but
watching this scene again, yeah, this general store owner is really, really intense. And he was saying in the documentary that he was actually in and out of a mental hospital as they were filming this. He was on day leave, did his scenes, came back, had no idea what was going on.
And he smoked a lot of reefer. Apparently he was high as a kite for this stuff. And do they ever actually... They point out the cloverleaf moles or birthmarks. But does that actually get set up earlier in the movie?
They just showed a couple people who had them.
Okay, so the grandpa never actually says that during one of his stories?
Not to my recollection.
Okay.
It's only about a mile away.
And again, this is ridiculous, but look at the makeup effects on this guy. Like, those appliances aren't that bad.
And the poor sucker had to stand there for friggin' 14 hours with his shoes nailed to the scenery. The director got upset with his whining, so forced him to wear the cover on the mouth. See, if you're gonna do a food that has weird green shit on it, cakes are the way to go. It's like, oh, it's a green icing, whatever, food coloring. A green drink, sure, that doesn't surprise me. But when you've got, like, green spread on corn, it's like, what the... I wouldn't touch that. What is that?
It's like green butter.
Green butter. It's not the color of butter.
I think it's great that he's, like, still holding the mug.
Well, as he said, he's paralyzed. He can't move. Which means that it's also affecting people in different ways, which isn't explained, but whatever.
I have to say, particularly, especially in those lab scenes, there's an element of this movie that reminds me of the Swamp Thing television series in the 90s.
We have to wait and be patient.
The wife of the director who wrote this movie, she had a bunch of friends who suddenly went vegetarian. So she is actually kind of sticking at the vegetarians almost out of spite in a very weird way. Congratulations. Wow, you were tired.
Well, they haven't eaten in like 3 days.
That doesn't stop the kid from having the energy to go skateboarding. The girl turns into a plant immediately. The guy becomes paralyzed. This guy just feels queasy. Granted, he's also doing the green sweat, which she was doing. So is there a time thing that goes on?
Maybe there's a different types of
Also,
delivery systems have like different absorption rates.
I feel as though that was probably spoiled milk, and that was the effect that they did, because that was coming out pretty goopy. And he spat that out really fast.
Good morning.
Don't break into our house, please.
I kind of love how Margot Prey makes Credence a little bit more normal looking. Because she's got such a strange sort of style of acting that the overacting of the other actress... I'm going to look up her name.
Oh, but you shouldn't have gone to so much trouble.
Deborah Reed.
Don't look at the camera. That's bad form. Of course, the director would have specifically asked her to do that. Is that anarchy graffiti on that wall there? The post?
Could have been.
The music's not even terribly outlandish. Certainly not for the time and the genre of movie that this is.
That minister reminds me of a professional wrestler.
Now that you mention it, actually.
And the way he talks, too.
Very Vince McMahon. Or perhaps The Undertaker's old MC.
Making sure you know something's going to happen there. That minister also has probably my favorite line in the whole movie. And right now, my favorite line in all of cinema. And you know, a signature of a lot of really like bad indie movies is, because of their time and budget and whatever restrictions they're facing or just lack of skill, a lot of times they'll try something like a jump scare, or, you know, it's not even a special effect. It's just something that requires a certain level of technical proficiency with editing and camera placement and whatever. I mean, the scene when he reaches up through the hole, it's really well done. It's executed really solidly. It's actually, it has more punch to it than I think, you know, any of a dozen scenes in a professional American television show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which should have like,
or the Pop-Tart
high-paid
jump scare
stunt
from
people.
Silent Hill Revelations 3D. The Pop-Tart jump scare was terrible. I could not believe they did that.
We should do a commentary for that one. I keep convincing myself that I need to rewatch Silent Hill Revelation and see, look how great that is. And the kid shaking like that, it's, how can you fault that, man? And there's so much handheld camera work in this, but it's
still well framed.
It's well done.
Yeah, it's moving a little bit, but she's still in the shot exactly as...
What a surprise.
Choose, Elliot. Either me
That so looks like he's coming out from just having sex.
This is a wonderful cup of mailbag ice cream for a little child.
They even got the mix-ins. Come on, man.
I love that they put toppings on it.
Help! Get us up! Help! Open your mouth, my little friend. Please.
I know how people speak and act.
Do you notice that when he's seeing the goblins, there's still like goblins as people in the background because they only have like 6 goblin masks?
You just licked up a little bit there, buddy.
What are you doing to my son? We were giving him some ice cream.
Forcibly.
They're goblins! Monstrous beings!
What?
They were giving me ice cream so they could eat me later.
An act of imagination. A bit morbid, isn't he?
Look at them! They all have a mold the shape of a clover leaf. And Milwaukee's goblins spelled backwards. I'm telling you, Daddy, they're monsters.
Mr. and Miss Presence, what are you doing here? I thought you were supposed to be in my house.
We had car trouble. We'll be leaving this evening.
Okay.
And see, it's a perfectly reasonable thing for him to ask. He's acting it fairly well. None of the goblins are acting well at all.
they do sort of technically give him very reasonable answers, but here it is. Here it is.
We need time for some things to happen. Until tonight.
I think that's going to become my motto. I need time for things to happen.
What is it?
Your sister Holly's with that playboy son of the Coopers.
Some pretty good stunt driving there.
He must have been going like 5 kilometers an hour, yet he skid 20 feet.
It's pretty amazing too when you see just how far away the road is.
Listen, Mr. Waits, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I don't speak.
I actually kind of expected him to punch him.
You give me a bad.
He's already been punched.
Come on, Dad.
We'll get in the car.
And then, of course, she forgives him, it seems.
Mr. Waits, we need to have a serious talk. If you want to have a serious talk, you'll have to forget about your friends and come to our house. Otherwise, you forget about Holly.
It's kind of culty, really.
Ellie.
You hear her saying that he has to choose between his friends or her, but then to hear the dad say the exact same thing, where you have to choose between your friends or the family.
Treat my daughter with respect, or piss off, buddy. Which is entirely reasonable. And that's the whole family thing that Fragosso's going for there, Mike. That's what we're supposed to see. That's what the movie's about.
They're just hammering that theme. I do think that part of what makes this movie so fun to watch and so great as a bad movie is the weird English as a second language writing style, as we pointed out before. But I do kind of wonder if this was maybe written in Italian, performed and shot in Italian, would it have played any differently? Would it have played a little bit straighter? Would it have had a little bit more gravitas? Or
That blends into his legs actually really well.
I know, I was pointing out earlier,
And the physical effects are not bad.
not bad at all. And even when you're looking at just the really basic stuff, oh look, that's just a branch wrapped around his arm, you don't really care because there are other shots, like the mouthpiece that he has, that appliance there, and the legs in the pot.
How high am I right now? Jeez.
But would some of those themes, just getting back to what I was saying earlier, would some of those
Would it come across a bit clearer?
some of the drama, yeah, would it be less silly, and would you actually maybe get that deeper movie that Fragasso is so convinced is there?
Which does make me want to watch another movie or two of Fragasso's and see if he's got something in his native Italian. See how that works out.
He is known for working on a number of Italian exploitation films. So it's very possible that
Get me out of here, Drew. Just get me out of here.
it's very possible that it's just
Okay, don't fret.
more stuff like this. But
Hurry before that crazy lady gets back.
He is really calm.
Grab the pot and drag me out quick. I'll try.
and even though the guy's half plant, he's like, "Get me out of here, because I'm sure everything's going to be okay."
As long as I'm out of here, it's okay. Wouldn't it be easier to just smash the plant and carry him over your shoulder?
Well, he's also pretty weak.
What's wrong? Why'd you stop? I don't feel so good. You gotta do it, man. Grab hold of the pot and pull with all of your strength. We can get out of this nightmare. Hurry!
Hi.
Oh no.
Conveniently lands on the bed.
It's quite the backhand, though. I wish I could backhand somebody 20 feet.
She is a druid.
Or a witch.
No, she's a druid.
Did she say that specifically?
Yeah. That's why she has part of Stonehenge in her house.
Will be punished for this.
I'll give this scene props because I was not expecting him to giggle. And he says, you'll feel a little tickle. I am looking at her performance a little bit differently now too, because I felt like she was making choices and pushing it that far. But it is entirely possible, like you said, that the director might have made demands on the performance. She might have been doing it in whatever way would make him happy. And going against her instincts.
A kale smoothie, perfectly reasonable to drink.
Or shamrock shake. I remember always wanting a shamrock shake when I was a kid, and I never got them. And then when I got old enough where I could buy myself a shamrock shake, they weren't making them anymore. And then I came back,
What's going on here?
and I went and I got myself a shamrock shake. It was so gross.
I'm going to try to do a little count here, because once again, population 26.
Including the parents. Presents. That's not at all weird that all these people are in our house.
To be fair, it's also not their house.
What are you doing here, Elliot? Mom, Elliot's part of the family now.
Oh, Elliot.
Oh, you crazy kids.
What a pleasure to see you again, Mr. Waits. We wanted to make up for the misunderstanding we had a little while ago. Look, all the people of Neobog have decided to give you a party. We even have a little food.
A little food, they prepared a whole feast.
It's kind of Alice in Wonderlandy with the eat me, drink me.
No, don't eat this stuff. They're monsters. They're all monsters. You eat this stuff, they'll kill us. They're goblins.
Joshua, I've had enough. I'm sick of
The off-center zoom.
room immediately.
It kind of feels like a Tales from the Crypt or a sort of Twilight Zone or Night Gallery episode too. Because while the movie is supposed to be a horror,
Ostensibly, anyway.
it's not really horrific. But it does have sort of that...
Grandpa, Grandpa says, answer me.
I can't think of the word for it.
If the goblins are vegetarian, why would they need to eat these people? It's the one thing that bugged me when I first saw it.
But it's so perfectly insane.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's definitely unique as hell. I will not say anything about that.
When you first described the movie to me, because originally the reason why we're doing this is because we made an offhanded joke in our very first episode where you said Troll 2 was the greatest movie of all time, and I made a reference to being episode 17.
Guess which episode this is, guys.
Well, this is the audio commentary. Episode 17 will be a separate thing.
Also fun powers.
She just sticks her arm in the Stonehenge replicator and gets a new hand. And Grandpa appears out of nowhere with an axe.
To be fair, if she's floating through the ethereal plane, why can't he do the same and attack her in it? I've played D&D, I know how those rules work.
Molotov cocktail. Yeah, Grandpa. And you know, I've seen worse like dismemberment effects too in low budget movies.
Although I do wonder what's going on with around her mouth.
What was the point I was trying to make with the whole episode 17 thing?
Just that that's the reason we're doing it.
I feel there was more to it.
You're also talking about how I initially described the movie to you.
Oh yeah, when you first described the movie to me, you gave me the plot, you told me about Nilbug, you told me about the goblins who want to eat people, but they're vegetarians, so they have to turn the people into plants first, which is just like batshit crazy. But having actually sat down and watched the film now, it's so crazy and unexpected. I think I would have loved to have experienced learning that, not having known it previously, just getting it from the film. I think
sometimes, yeah, learning it organically is way better. Like He Never Died, I saw it organically without seeing the trailer, so it changed the experience for me.
See, it's all daytime, man.
And inconsistent as balls. Now the grandpa is able to affect physical reality. Give him a Molotov that he made from Ghostland, apparently.
Cut it out, kid. You'll never be able to stop us. That's what you old man.
I swear I've seen him in something else. Looks like he's going to turn into the Hulk. Actually, because of the weird, like, vegetarian, plant-based chlorophyll kind of deaths and vegetarian message, they're
It's
also
sort of anti-vegetarian.
there's
message.
also aspects of this movie that reminded me of season 2 of Helix.
I could see that, actually.
Which is also kind of batshit crazy.
Though I did like how it ended. Demon, be gone! Oh, you know, lightning.
I think that's
Molotov.
the reaction. I think that's the reaction of like everybody watching the film. I was happy to notice in the documentary, I couldn't help
Run
but-
here. 1, 2, 3, then grab it.
He just knows that there's a fire extinguisher there. And I laughed. And then watching the documentary, George Hardy was asking,
How did I know it was there?
and he's like, that's not the point. You're missing the point of the scene.
And I think that tells a lot about Claudio Fragasso and how he does his movies. That what he sees as the point is different from what we see as the whole.
Oh my god, what is this?
He was one of us, and you killed him. Now it's your turn.
This totally could have been an episode of Masters of Horror.
That guy, he so reminds me of Wilfred Brimley from John Carpenter's The Thing.
Gene Freak there?
Don't you get it? They're trying to be us.
The sheriff?
Yeah.
And this scene goes on for so long.
Why is no one jumping to him?
It kind of
There
makes
should be
sense.
25 of you here. Come on, it's 25 on 4.
It kind of makes sense though when you think about it, because they don't want to kill them violently. They want them to.
Well, now's when you force feed them.
But then you went to have that great scene where he throws him a bag of sandwiches.
Also, their leader's kind of gone. They don't know how to act.
I think that is one of the best, like, villain threats in a horror movie I've ever seen. We have a bag of sandwiches.
People in this show just do not like buttoning up their shirts.
I can't decide if the reason why they changed her look was because they felt they needed some, like, sexiness happening in the show, or if they were just saving on makeup.
All I know is, for those of you who don't know what's coming up, get your kids out of the room because it's going to be a little too much eroticism for all of them. Here's your nighttime. Which means they've been waiting around for a long time.
Well, no, because she cast a spell or something and the sun went down.
There's sandwiches for tonight in here. Go easier if you eat it. You'll make our work easier. Otherwise, we'll be forced to kill you violently.
It would be a shame. The blood would mix with the meat, and we'd have to put them in vinegar for the whole night.
Well, I'd hate to have to inconvenience you guys.
Oh dear God, what can we do? We don't even have enough weapons to defend ourselves.
Do something.
We don't have enough weapons to effectively defend ourselves. Which implies they have some weapons.
We need Grandpa Seth here.
Joshua, Grandpa Seth is dead.
I know he's dead, but until now he's been the one helping us. But how do we get him to come? By holding a seance, maybe? You're a genius, big sister.
Because, of course, looking in the mirror and saying, "Hey, Grandpa Seth."
I want to know what they're watching on their televisions because it looks almost as crazy, if not crazier, than the movie that we're watching.
He's about 22 years late with his porno riffs.
Like it? Shall we eat it together?
Whose show is this?
You're not a program.
I think I'm going to have to go online and see if I can find an explanation for why the corn is there.
Probably because it is the sexiest of foods.
It's the sexiest of vegetables.
Is he hearing the music differently out here?
I think he is, yes.
What shall we do with the corn? All I can ever think about is the reference with greasing it up and sticking it where the sun don't shine.
You know, you also have to give this movie credit. Like, I would let my kids watch this.
It's true.
There's no nudity.
Well,
There's no...
the very end scene with the eating the mom, the whole dummy that they have, although it is sort of covered up by green goo.
It's an implied breast.
Do you like it?
Even so, it's certainly not sexual in any way, shape, or form.
But there really is, like, nothing about this movie.
That's viscerally objectionable.
Like, this is a PG movie.
At the same time, I don't want my kids thinking that this is how you make popcorn.
Sure beats the microwave, though.
Why'd the music stop?
Things are getting serious.
The corn holster.
I really was watching this whole scene and just wondering what's going to happen with that corn.
I know, you expected, is it going to be a murder weapon?
This really doesn't turn out the way I expected it to.
Hungry?
Actually, I like popcorn.
Well, no problem. What we have to do is heat it up.
Is this one of those midnight movies where they have like audience interaction, or do people just sit down and watch it?
I've heard of them doing the audience interaction thing where they'll play it on as they're doing it, just like Rocky Horror.
Because this popcorn scene is sort of made for audience interaction. To start throwing popcorn in the air.
I'm sure the theaters would love that.
Nothing's happening.
Good thing they had all these candles kicking around.
Raise your hands. Concentrate harder. Grandpa said, come to us.
It was interesting to also see George Hardy's almost disillusionment with... I mean, he obviously got swept up in the whole kind of cult classic status and going all around the world, but you see him in London and you see him at that horror convention in the documentary, and he's kind of losing the script or losing the plot. Like, he just...
I don't like this. Why don't they show any sign of life?
he's definitely not happy.
Well, he wasn't getting any more attention.
Come and help us.
A lot of his friends did kind of say that he was sort of the attention hog to an extent. And you broke the circle, George. You don't want to do that. I'm starting to think he doesn't know how to do a seance.
It's not a bad lighting effect.
Joshua! Joshua!
That's not possible.
I knew you wouldn't leave us, Grandpa.
That's the voice of your grandpa?
Yes.
We have only 10 minutes. When that clock starts striking 6, I'll disappear. And now it's
The clock is 5 minutes slow.
together we can destroy the magic stone.
Or fast, one of the two.
Goblins their power. Concentrate, Joshua. Concentrate.
Yes, Grandpa.
I wonder if that's another.
Um,
I wonder if that's another theme of the movie. You know, if you just concentrate and keep out sort of outside distractions of the world, you can accomplish anything.
Yet another one of those nonsensical things. I don't see how they're more effective when they're 2 feet shorter. It almost seems like going in with, I don't know, that shotgun you had 2 minutes ago would have been better.
It's quite the run up the stairs. And where the heck did that goblin come from?
He jumped down from up there. It was one of those straight down sort of ceilings in the stairwell. Hiding there like a painting.
So did Joshua switch places with the goblin at the end of the seance? Is that what happened?
I would say so.
Kind of seems that way.
There's just a lot of unexplained magic, ghost magic.
But the
Druid
beauty of this movie is that there's so many weird, unexplained things, leaps of logic, odd bits of dialogue, of explanation or lack of explanation, but you don't care. Somehow it sort of just seems to fit the whole bizarre tapestry of the film.
The thing is, all these leaps of logic, you can at least sort of even see the canyon they jumped over. Whereas if you're watching something truly terrible like an Asylum movie, everything they do is stupider than the last thing, but it almost feels planned and hokey. Here it feels a bit more organic. Like
I've never seen
somebody
an
had
film.
a vision. Yeah, well, I'll have to show you one then.
Well, I keep hearing Sharknado is like amazing in its stupidity, but
I disagree. I think they tried too hard and it didn't have the magic that this movie does manage to capture. And honestly, every Asylum movie I've seen is basically exactly the same in terms of how it fails, which is on every single point. I love these movies looking for the gems in them, and I don't
There's a
see
great line.
any. Sorry, what?
I said, there's a great line. Go away, monster! But are the Asylum movies, like, again, part of the charm of this movie is the fact that they tried really hard. They played it straight.
I don't feel that the Asylum movies are trying that hard. I think that they're not playing it straight, that they're going for bad.
They're trying to make a bad movie.
They're trying to make a bad movie,
A good
but
bad movie.
They're not good at it. I don't think they're trying to make it good either. That's the thing. You'll have to watch one with me, and we'll see what you think. Because of course, like, they're doing a lot of mockbusters as well, where they come up with a plot that they know is dumb. Like Sharknado, that's stupid. But when they made Pacific Rim, the Asylum came up with Atlantic Rim. They do that for like 80% of their movies, where it's like maybe somebody will be walking through the store and will be like, what was the name of that movie? Atlantic Rim? That sounds right. Rent it accidentally. It's almost like that's how they're hoping to get all their money.
It's like all those Disney movies that have like the independent cheapo cartoon version that's always on VHS or DVD while the Disney movie's in theaters, and it confuses people. Oh, Pocahontas, or oh, Hunchback.
Oh, hey, it's Turkish Star Wars, except they didn't have Turkish in front of it, so it's Star Wars. This must be the movie I'm thinking of.
I've never seen it, but I love the idea of there was an animated Titanic film made back in, I guess, the 90s. It was shortly after James Cameron's Titanic came out, and it actually advertised on the back that this was fun for families because it has a happy ending.
That's not Titanic.
There is a point here where he stops touching the rock.
Weren't they all upstairs 2 seconds ago? How big is this house?
There was 2 stairwells, one on each side of the hallway.
To be fair, they only had 25 people with which to surround them.
When I first saw the goblin masks in that opening sequence where the grandpa's telling the story, I actually didn't mind them.
I find the ones with the bulgy eyes a little bit much, because To be fair, like, her eyes are bulging right there. So it is something real people would do. But it's the lack of eyelids. When it's all dark and you can't quite see the eyes, then it works a lot better.
No more. No more popcorn.
I don't think he understands what sex is.
Well, I get headaches when I have too much popcorn. Now, I had to think about this, and I was thinking the reason why she's screaming is because the grandpa and Joshua are touching the rock.
Which is causing them to lose whatever magic power that they have keeping them.
And it was the power that made her beautiful.
Joshua's alone right now. Let's go.
Grandpa, nothing's happening.
Something has happened now, Joshua. I'm leaving.
I'm unable to touch the stone anymore.
Oh, you know what? I'll bet you Grandpa's not touching the stone because they're going to do an optical effect.
Once again. Remember, it's only the power of goodness that can defeat the goblin.
And I think it's supposed to look like he is touching the stone.
Goodbye, Grandpa.
There you go, you're right.
That was great when she grabs his throat.
And lifts him up slowly. It looks very natural.
Like, I'm telling you, there are television shows and films made here with budgets
That do that way worse.
that do that so badly. And maybe it's just that the bar is set so low.
I think it's one of the gems in the rough.
But I defy that logic, yeah. This movie was after Ghostbusters 2, when the franchise was kind of, air quote, ruined, so they probably had, like, just a lot of cheap ectoplasm that they could buy. Okay, my joke was bad. The double-decker bologna sandwich is brilliant.
That's like...
Think about the calories, the toxins, the cholesterol.
To
She's
be
cholesterol.
fair, that's like an entire package of bologna in there.
It is.
It's a double-decker sandwich because it's 2 whole friggin' things.
Okay. I love the fact he throws the sandwich at them. And I love the fact that somewhere out there somebody made a video game
Where he's throwing those
where he
sandwiches
throws...
at the goblin.
That's his weapon.
At a certain point, you just stop questioning the kid, okay? There's also a certain point where you never eat anything green again for the rest of your life.
You can actually see the actor playing the troll in that last railing scene where he's going to go over the railing, but they cut. And now he goes over.
Exploding eyeballs.
See that? credence getting messed up there. Like, it actually looks pretty good.
What are you even concentrating on?
I have to pass by the office. I need to go home. Sorry.
I'll come with you. Joshua and I will wait for you at home.
You'd think after that everybody would at least want to shower.
They are all looking pretty damn sweaty.
That fridge isn't stocked much better than the RV fridge. But I guess they were going away for a month.
In that case, they bought a lot of apples.
I'd actually hoped that the presents did go into town, because I was thinking that means that there's goblins running amok in the city.
Well, the thing is, they were there back in Nilbog during the
But they were there, yeah. So
creature scene, so
it's unfortunate.
of course maybe the magic has a range.
They could have done Troll 3 goblins in the city or something.
Technically, there is a Troll 3, which is about killer plants in the military. I've tried hunting it down. I've never been able to really get it.
Fragasso is making, or he wants to make, a sequel. And
Troll 2 Part 2.
Troll 2 Part 2. And apparently he's asked the kid.
To reprise his role.
Yeah. It's kind of like the end of Aliens, where you think you're safe, but then you find out the Queen was actually in the dropship, in the landing gear.
The thing is, it's a really cop-out sort of ending. Because let's say you're actually going for something. To have this kind of stinger ending, it's just there for the stinger and the sequel possibility, the sequel baiting.
That's horror movies of the time, though.
So you can see where he doesn't think he's compromising his vision, yet at the same time there's a lot of compromises made for all sorts of weird things. That could have been a very awkward thing to walk in on.
Yes, it could have. I was actually expecting something really awkward, but... I like the little touch with the apple there.
Although it makes me wonder, how much of it did you eat without even noticing? And here's the scene which you probably figure happened, where they got their mouths all stained.
Well, even the scene where the lady in the woods, the one that got tackled, when she melts on the floor and they're all sitting there scooping the goop up into their faces. And that is the end of Troll 2.
The best worst movie? I don't know, but it's actually not. It's not terrible. It's got a lot of stupid nonsense in it. That is for sure.
That was pretty much my feeling when I finished it the first time. I just thought it's really weird, but yeah,
I've seen a lot of movies of equivalent quality, certainly in a lot of different areas. I've seen a lot of movies that are certainly worse.
There are movies with higher budgets that are worse, that don't know what they're doing.
But certainly this is not one that I'm against seeing again. There's a lot of movies where I am never sitting through that garbage again. I'm not going to ever watch Hell Driver again. That movie was terrible. I'm not going to watch Human Centipede 2 or 3 ever again. Those were god-awful.
Was that just because you didn't like them? Or was that just because...
No, they were like viscerally upsetting and not in any sort of beneficial way.
But they weren't badly made.
Not necessarily badly made. Hell Driver, maybe. That was sort of a low-budget Japanese movie where they did a lot of weird stuff in it. But it's just, it did nothing for me. This one, at least, amused. And it's a fun movie. That's one thing that you can definitely say about it.
But that brings us to a close of another audio commentary. If you guys are enjoying these, feel free to send requests for movies that you want us to watch. I think just over the course of this commentary alone, we've come up with 2 or 3 that we could probably do.
2 or 3 that we should even just figure out what the heck the name of the movie is.
And yeah, so...
Until then, enjoy your own movies, and hopefully you don't bug whoever you're watching them with by talking the entire time. My brother would have killed me. He cannot stand it when people talk during movies.
That's kind of the point of a commentary, though, so...
I know, right?
Alright, so be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at FYC Show. We're on all the social media. Let us know what you think.
And we hope you enjoyed the movie, too.
So that's a wrap on another episode of For Your Consideration. Thanks for joining me, Dustin.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Thanks for joining me, Dustin.
Thanks for having me, John. Thanks for having me, Mike. Which is your name, not whatever I was saying.
Let's try that again. Start again.
I remember your name. You shut up.